Hi everyone. I think I'll introduce myself first. My name is Shuru, and today I'll be giving you a workshop about how to paint shadows and light. I'm gonna try my best to keep it as simple. Oh, okay. To keep it as simple and clear as possible. All right. Okay. So let's start by talking about what do we know about lights and shadows. I'll start with the first one is that wherever there's light, shadow will always follow, right? That's something we know for sure. But we also know that um, lights travel in straight lines, right? So let's start by doing this. Right? So this is our light source, okay? And this is our object. So as I said, we know that the light travels in straight lines. That means that when it comes in contact with an object, with a solid body, right, it's gonna stop here. And as a result of that, you're gonna find that there is going to be something here, right? So this area we call it here is a shadow, and this is your light source. This shadow is a result of the object blocking the area of light, right? Yeah, they never leave each other's side. So yeah, I'm saying, so because of that, now we know two things. We know that wherever there's light, there's shadow, and we know that the light travels in straight lines. So whenever it hits a solid object, you're going to find that the area behind that object, we're gonna be covered. The light will never reach it. Okay, so that's something. So what's the other thing that you figure out from this is that the shadow will be always on the opposite side of the light. So if you have the light on this side, you're always gonna have the shadow on this side, right? Okay, so now we got three things down. Another interesting thing we could talk about here is that the closer your light is, all right, the shadow will be. So right now, let's say my light is at this distance, all right? So my shadow here, let's say that it's pretty big. It's a big light source, and it's pretty close. That means my shadow here will become very soft, right, and very big, all right? But what if my light source is smaller, all right, and farther away? Like, let's say here, all right? So what do you think will be the case? Yeah, no, less light means sharper shadow. Yes, exactly. So that means here, not enough. Yeah, you're gonna get your shadow here very sharp. All right. So that's another thing that you know. Yeah. So you can actually try it out. You put a light source and play around with objects around you, and you're gonna actually see that difference. So these are some things that you should know about how lights and shadows interact with each other. Now, here's a trick question. When do you not get shadows? What do you think? Light is centered with the object? Okay, when the light is exactly on top of the object, we call this happen.
it's a phenomenon that happens with the sun in some areas of the world, in Singapore and in Hawaii. So exactly at noon, or celestial noon, they call it, the light source has shadow on the object when it's exactly directly on top of it at 90 degrees. Now, yeah. So because right now, how are you gonna draw the shadows? Is it gonna be here? Is it be here? It will be exactly here, but the object itself is hiding the shadow. So you can't really see, the light is not, what do you call it? It's not covering something. Like the object is not what do you call it? It the light doesn't have anything to cast the shadow on. So yeah, so that's the only time where you never get shadows. I hope you got the idea. Okay, so that's the only time when you don't get the shadow, is when you have the light exactly on top of the object. Let me show you. It is something to do with something called the Asaro head, right? So if you see these, all right, I'm gonna pick 3 and we're gonna examine them. Okay. Where? So let's start with the first. This one. Where do you think the light is coming from? Below. Below, from this direction, right? I'm gonna draw it to point. It comes from this direction, right? It's hit only there, and it's coming on this area, but these parts are shadows, right? On the top. Yeah, correct. Below on the left side. Okay, what about this one? The right side. Exactly. That is correct. Yep, the right. So all of this area is being hit by the light, right? And then you have the shapes turning to the side, and then you got all of this area that is dark. Okay, let's do one more, and we'll do. Okay, we'll do the one beside it. This one. Yes, it is coming from behind. The light source is coming from this side. From the, like, it looks as if it's coming from the left, but it is not. It's coming from the back, because only this area is, and you can find that the ear here, right? This part of the ear is what do you call it? Is shaded, and it's hiding this area. So on this side and this side, that is lighted up. Cool, right? All right. So now we understand how lights and shadows interact, and like which direction when the light comes from, where do you get the shadow, and where do you get the areas that have light on them. Oh, okay. The next one would be is, how many types do we have for shadows? Oh, you're gonna tell me, oh, we have types for shadows? It's not exactly types. It's more like I'd rather stick to calling the types. Yeah, I think that would be better. So, as we the previous example for the Asaro head, is that we have 2 different areas that have really dark shadows, and some of them have really light areas of shadows. Okay. So let's try doing. I just need a brush. Yeah, this one. Okay, so let's see here. I'm gonna have have 2 types of shadows. We have cast shadow and we have form shadow. So what is a cast shadow? If you could guess from the word itself, it means the shadow that's being casted on the surface, right? So my light is is coming here, right? And as a result, I will get shadows here behind the object, right? So this shadow here is called shadow. All right, and this is always as a result from the object being in front of the light, and it's like a result of the object um, covering the light, right? And it usually looks like the shape of the object itself. So for example, have here a box. All right, if we use this box, okay, how will our light look like? So here we have the light source. It's coming down like this. And we have our shadow. So it will look like something like this. Right? So this is our cast shadow. It will look like that. Okay? Same thing for this object, for example. So let's see. We have the light source here. And our shape. So this one is a bit tricky, but it's like that. It should look like that, I guess. All right. So this is again cast shadow. So kind of a triangle, you could say. Which area should be darker? Right now we're just like talking about how what are the shadow types, and so as I said, the cast shadow is always going to be on the surface that the body, all the object is standing on, and it will be almost similar to the shape of the object. So this is so far what is a cast shadow. Now, if we talk about form shadow, if you noticed on the Asaro heads, all right, we have areas here that are, oops, sorry, areas here that are a bit darker than the normal shadow, right? Like they're not light and they're not exactly shadows. And those areas that we see here are like, we call them is form shadow, right? This area is here. This area is here. So what is a form shadow? Form shadows are the shadows that show on the surface of an object that's turning away from the light, right? So it's going to be this area here. Let me show you. It's gonna be here. So let's do it. So airbrush, that would be better. Okay. So it will be this area. So this here is what form shadow or core shadow, right? And it's what tells you about the, what do you call it? It's the surface that's turning away from the light. It's not exactly directly facing the light, nor directly facing away. So let's look at this one, for example, here as well. So this one will look like this. So here, here, oops. Yeah. Cool. What about boxes? So this one will look like this. Here we have. So the thing about boxes is that they have edges. So for me to show you exactly how it looks like, I need to draw the edges of the boxes. So like, let's say here, oops, make this, right? And you have this one here, and you have here, right? So on the edges, you're gonna find that most of the surface is gonna be the same shade or almost the same color, depending on the type of surface that it is. So if on this side it will be the darkest, right? Because it's kind of facing too far away from the light, and this one will be a little bit lighter, right? And here the surface is gonna be lightened, right? Okay, so yeah. Now I guess I hope you got the idea of the two shadow types. So that this one form and this one is called cast. Okay. Now moving on to the next. Okay. Okay. So practice we're gonna do is we're gonna discuss this painting. So this painting is by someone called John Sargent, right? He's a painter. I thought of picking this maybe painting to discuss what do we see or what can we understand from values on the image itself. So looking at colored pictures is kind of a hard way to tell if where exactly is the light and where is it brightest, right? Yeah, the light is coming from the front, right? Exactly. But here's the thing that we want to practice this time. It's not the direction of the light, but it's trying to figure out where is it brightest and where is it darkest. We need to figure out the contrast of like, how can our eyes recognize such a contrast? And to do that, you need to turn the image into black and white. All right? So because here now we have only one what do you call it, color, right? Color gradient, and which is the grayscale. You can actually ignore all of the colors and focus on where is your values, where is the brightest areas and where are the darkest areas. So let's take a quick look on that. All right. So as you can see that this area here is the brightest. This area here is a bright area. Here also, right? Here also. And here, 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 here. So all of this light and around this part of the painting, right? And where do we have the darkest areas? It's all around here. So all of the spots is the dark area, right? And then we have a closer color, right? This one here, this part. Which are kind of around here, you could say. Those are, this coloring is, if you can tell, is for the warm shadows are closer to the light in their shade, right? In their dark, yeah, yeah. So like closer to the light than it is closer to the dark area, and this helps us give contrast, so you can actually see proper shapes, proper what do you call it? The things that tell you what is the thing that you're looking at. All right, so that's one. Let's try another one. Okay, like this one. All right, so this lady here. So we can tell that the darkest areas are around here, here, and here, right? And it's marked with this. And then our brightest again is area here, 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 and here, right? And then this area is the parts that are going a bit farther away from the light, which are form shapes. Here you can see this again. So this is light from the lady. Yep. And this here is your form shadow. All right. Okay. So we got something interesting from this, right? Is that we're able to tell where are the colors are usually on a grayscale, or the bright, like the brightness, where you can tell shadows and bright areas should be on. Let's see. Okay. So the next step is, if you look at her hair, it also has, what do you call it? You can still see that her hair here, 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 here is the darkest area because it's completely facing from the light, and because it's also a dark part already, like it's supposed to be black. You have here this part, which is the shine. Yeah, you can see the light. It's not exactly light stroke. Like when you look at things like that, look at them as what do you call it? Shapes. All right. Don't look at them as singular things. So even when you're looking at the way I'm marking the areas, I'm marking them as shapes because you treat the values that you use to help you see shapes. You know, you're not looking for details. You're not looking for colors. We're trying to focus on how the effects of lights and shadows affects the way you see objects and shapes. And most of the things, this is what makes you able to see shapes, the light and the shadow. So if you can't really figure out how to see them, how to recognize them, you're not going to be able to put them or draw them properly. Okay, I'm going to move to the next part, which is talking about values. So we already saw the gray scale, all right? But what is the point of it? That's the thing. So why do we need this? All right. The reason we need this is for us to help us to figure out where our values should be on the picture. So what are values? Values are the what do you call it? The shades of a color on a scale. So this scale I can turn it into any color right now. The only thing is that my saturation is really low and I'm using only black and white. So let me show you. So for example, let's take this one again, and I will show you something interesting. So here, I can actually change this into a different color. All right, not this one. Oops. So from this here, we have something called shadows, midtones, and highlights. So the highlights are the brightest areas. So if I try and do this, you can see that the color is changing. Do you see it? The color changing? Yeah. Now, if I go for midtones, this area here is called the midtones. The one, all right? This part here is called midtones. Let me show you the highlights. Yeah, let me just put there. All right. So midtones are the parts that are in the middle, obviously. Okay. And then we got the shadows. So the shadows are the darkest part. So if I do the same thing here, you got almost what do you call it? So now you have a new different scale, but you don't even need to change the values. You only just had to change the saturation. I can turn this back into black and white if you need. So to turn this black and white, all I have to do is change the saturation back. Cool? Interesting, right? So that's what we're focusing on here is values. Can you repeat the step, please? It's fine. You don't really need to know what I just did exactly, but what I did is basically just playing around with the color hues and changing back the scale with the saturation. So let's focus on what are values so you can understand what I just said. So values again is the scale of a color. So be it a gray scale, a pink scale, red scale, or whatever you want. The only difference here is that usually to understand shadows and lights, we usually like to stick to the gray scale. The darkest point in it is black. The brightest point on it is white, right? You can see it here. Oops, it keeps doing that, right? So the brightest point is white, the darkest point is black. So the black represents shadow, and light represents, and white represents shadow. So usually when you try to paint with these values, you try to keep it simple because you don't want to complicate the painting. You can actually just draw a painting, a simple painting with just two values, the white and the black, and you'd still have a comprehensible shape. Someone will understand what you're drawing. And it's always advised to keep these values separate. You can't pick three colors right beside each other and expect someone to understand what you're trying to do. The closer your shades are, the harder it is for the eye to recognize the shape. All right? So you do not try and pick things close to each other. You try to make them as far as possible as you can. All right? And you should make sure that your exposure is only for one thing. So when I say exposure, is that the thing that you're exposing the most. So if you have a lot of dark stuff, make sure that it's only one value. You have a lot of white stuff, make sure that it's like you're trying to expose white, make sure that it's only one value for the light. All right? So yeah, that's for the grayscale. Now, there is something interesting about this, and mostly I would advise you to keep it at 3 values. Let's see, do I have it here? Yeah, I would advise you to keep it at 3 values. Why? Because that is basically enough for you to represent light, shadow, and the form shadow. So where does the form shadow come in? If you remember, try to pick it as close as to the white. All right? So this one, we went through it. We said this is average light, we call it. Well, this one we call it average shadow. And this one we call it half tones. Okay, cool? We always like try to stick to these 3 to keep when we're trying to do light studies or keeping it simple. Now let's move to the next practice. I was gonna paint this in front of you, so hopefully I can do it now. Okay. Now I have the shape. Okay, cool. And I'm gonna try and do it as fast as I can. Okay. So I'm gonna pick the darkest point, right? And I will do this here. You can see that I'm doing the form shadow, okay? It's the part that's going away from the light, you can notice. And then I'm gonna pick the brightest part. Okay. This one is for the form shadow. Oops. Shouldn't be too dark. All right. And then we have something interesting, which is usually Yeah, I'll talk about that when I get to the shadow part. And then we draw our shadow. So our shadow is usually right here below our nice object, right? Cool. Okay, and then we have a really tiny area here. We call it the occlusion, which is really dark. So let's do this. Select. And it's usually right really below the object. Okay, select. Right area in this point. Okay. Interesting. I just barely did very simple stuff, and you can still tell that it's a ball, right? Yeah. Um, Here's an example for a box. So remember what I said about the box being side pretty dark, one side pretty between both sides because it's the form shadow that's going away from the shape. And the top part here is the bright area, which is directly facing the light. Here, bright, light, form, shadow, and yeah. I have around like 2 minutes left, actually. I'm gonna make this quick. So I was gonna show you a painting demo, but sadly we're gonna finish soon. Maybe next time, maybe you can follow me on Instagram, and I could do like an online demo if you'd like. Let me write my account so you can see it. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm really happy. So let me just type it in. If you have any questions, drop them now while I just write my account. So this is on Instagram. Thank you so much for coming in. I hope you really liked and you were what do you call it? Would benefit from this. Yes, you need practice, a lot of practice. You need to make sure that you always have references when you do these type of practices. Because if you don't have reference and you try to do things just from your memory, it's not gonna be as easy or simple. So yeah, a lot of practice, a lot of references. You need to understand, like, try to look up the Asaro head I just showed you. It's called head. Okay, and this one will make it easier for you to understand how lights is on the head and shapes of heads. You just play with the flashlight.